Hi, this is Roger. Thanks for dropping by. It's the 8th, so everything in bloom on this day. No buds, no spikes, no new growths, just blooms on this day. Regular monthly update, and today it looks like we're going to have some sunshine, so I should have the bright light. I want to try and set the tripod up and do some close-ups in this video, so the time it'll take me to do the video will be quite a bit longer than normal, but for a regular once a month update I think it's worth it to get right in close and look at some of the orchids. I won't be doing it for all of them. The big blousy ones I don't need the tripod but there are some very small blooms around that would take a bit of a, good close look at. So I'll get on with it once the light comes round. I'm taking a risk, but then if the sun goes in and it turns cloudy, it's no different to how it is now before the sun gets here. I mean, you can see the difference in the light levels. This is the ambient light level that the camera's just adjusted to. I saw it brighten up as I moved it. But if you look up there, where the bright light is, that's much better light for filming in especially for close-ups where, I need that light. So that's what I'll do. I'll film it in clips and things like that, and I'll try and make a good video out of this. It is a regular update, and I'd like it to be a little bit special. So getting the tripod out, putting up the plant names and all things like that, it's worth the effort for this one, I think. We'll see how we go. Right, we'll start off with my no ID Cymbidium. Blooms have lasted incredibly well, but you can see they're just starting to go. So this one definitely won't make it to next month, but it's in this time. The other spike up the back there will last a little longer because it opened later. The first blooms to come out were on this spike. But the colours are starting to fade now. That will be gone soon, but nonetheless it's there for now. My large spring dreamer pollen, I thought I'd film that where it is in the light. The sun coming in through there just lights up blooms. It puts a whole new perspective. That's a big word for this time of day. But the variable colours do vary. I mean, the blooms up on the top there have got far less pink than, say, some of these down here, where the pink tinges are quite prominent. But a very, very attractive Nobly hybrid. Common as muck, everybody's got one. They're frequently for sale, so it's an easy one to pick up. And quite honestly, out of the Nobly hybrids, it's also an easier one to grow and look after. But just be warned, when you buy it, it'll probably be 12 to 14 inches high and covered in blooms. And after a few years of being grown well, it'll be over 2 foot tall. They get big. They do grow in time. So yeah, well, that one's doing well. Blooms are still hanging in there. You can see some are starting to drop, but some of them have only just opened, so it's still going to be in bloom for some time. It's already been out for ages. I'll be looking for new growths on that one. Oh, I can see new growths on that one. So that's that one. And I'll catch this one as it's right next to it. I always forget the name of this one. This is, it's a Latoria type. It's Polysema crossed with Aberrans. And attractive blooms until you turn them over. And when you turn them over and look at the back, they're far more attractive. So it often pays to look at your Latoria blooms and see which way they look best from. And if they look best from behind, then lower your pot down so that you can view them from above. And if they look better from underneath, then put them up high and view them from underneath. But small but attractive, and 3 spikes on the go at the moment, and new growths coming out all over the place. There's at least 4 new growths on this plant, and they're bigger than they were before. So the plant is progressing nicely, but it's been in bloom for ages. But then that's Latorias, that's what they do. Well, this hasn't happened before. Is everything in bloom on this day? Well, this is Spring Dreamer pollen as well. This was a kiki that Rachel sent me that's decided to bloom as well. So I've actually got a duplicate of this one. Nonetheless, there's still blooms. My other Latoria that's in bloom is Dendrobium rhodostictum, and this has been in bloom for ages and is showing no signs of going over whatsoever. Attractive shape, irrespective of colour, but it's the purest of whites and very, very delicate markings in the lip. And as Latorias go, a pretty good size. There are some Latorias with larger blooms than that, but quite a few of them have got quite small blooms, but then lots of them, so you can't have everything. But yeah, I really do like this one. And it does have, I was going to say I'll be looking for new growths on this. This has bloomed on each new growth as it's produced them. Bloomed here, now it's blooming on this new growth, and it's got another new growth just starting. I'm hoping to get more than one new growth this time. The root system's taken off a bit, so hopefully it'll push up more than one. And also, only one bloom, followed by two blooms this time. So maybe more next time. I mean, it is still a young plant. I'll catch this one while it's in the light, Coleogene cristata, and it's the variety Lemoniana. And it's a first time bloomer for me. Absolutely stunning blooms. The hairiness in the lip is just weird. But again, the purest of whites. There's a very slight fragrance, but not much. But yeah, first time bloomer and greatly appreciated. Looking forward to more. Basically, it grew well last year and produced some nice big fat bulbs that haven't shriveled down in the winter or anything like that, so I'm obviously looking after it okay, or better than I used to, let's put it that way. And yeah, looking forward to more spikes next year, not just the one. And I've got a duplicate plant. I've got 2 potfuls of this, similar size, similar stage of development. Whether I'll still have both of them this time next year, I don't know. But well worth having and quite long lasting so far. I'm quite pleased with that. And I can catch this one while it's lit up without even moving it, even though I've got to get it down to watering, to water it. But this is my Dendrobium aphyllum kiki that came from Alberto in Italy. And I did not expect this to bloom. But the fact that it has, I'm absolutely over the moon. These are not long-lasting blooms, but it's a case of, what more can you ask for? Look at the delicate marking on the outside of the lip, tucked in underneath the petals and sepals, and just a lovely delicate shape. Got this sort of funnel-shaped lip that slightly curves upwards if you look at it from the side. Beautiful little flowers, and yeah, I need growths on this. I need more canes to do more of that this time next year. But as a kiki, that's not bad, is it? My big and blousy no ID Cattleya, these are quite large blooms, is just starting to go over. These don't last a huge amount of time, but while they're out, they're pretty good going. And lovely fragrance on this, smells of freesias or hints of freesias. And the sister plant, the only reason I divided this was simply because I couldn't get it in the pot and it had 2 leads, so I split the plant. This is one of them and the other one's just opening up there. So we will have a succession even though they're on different plants, but they are one and the same. So that's a duplicate. That can probably go later in the year, or one of them anyway. This is one of my Dendrobium phalaenopsis types. It's actually got a name, it's Thai Angel, and hasn't bloomed for a very long time, but the plant's picking up now, and its latest growth is bigger than I've ever had before, and it produced a flower spike in the middle of winter. They seem to be lasting quite well, but catching a bit of sunlight at the moment, so quite nice. Yeah, my phalaenopsis type Dendrobiums don't do as well as most of my other dendrobiums, but then they're not dead yet, so they're coming on, shall we say. Now this lovely bright orange Cattleya, Young Min Orange. I love it when the clonal name is the colour, it's quite helpful. But yeah, these won't be around too much longer. They've been out a reasonable amount of time, but several blooms have already dropped. They'll drop in the same succession as they opened, but nonetheless 2 spikes on that one. Yeah, that got a first at the BOS show, and I'm well pleased with its progress. It's got 2 leads and hopefully will produce 2 new growths soon. Maybe more? More would be good. More of that this time next year, or maybe earlier. But yeah, lovely, lovely Cattleya, that one. Not large blooms, but it makes up for it with numbers. Very nice. And my Nellie Isla Red Velvet, they seem to be lasting quite well, but again, it's probably because the spike was produced in the winter. Nonetheless, the lower temperatures do seem to hold the blooms a bit longer than if this was like blooming in the full summer, when the plant wouldn't be very happy because it's too warm for it. But nonetheless, they're holding well, and this is a much deeper red than the camera will show. The reds just always seem to get lightened by my camera, well, and quite a few other people's cameras as well. But these are holding in there. It's dropped 2 blooms, but we've still got 4 to go. They probably won't be around too much longer, and then I'll be looking for growths and more spikes, now that I've got some roots on the flipping thing. My little polybulbon, Dinema polybulbon, is blooming for the first time. Tiny little blooms, but attractive in their own right. Produced 6 blooms. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 are still left. One's just gone, but very tiny, but nonetheless very attractive. And well pleased with that as a first-time bloomer. Now all I've got to do is try and stop it climbing off the mount. A real rambler, this one, but nonetheless attractive. Oh, and I keep forgetting to say, when the light hits this one, it smells of marzipan. So every time it pushes out that fragrance, for me it smells like Christmas. You know, Christmas cake and all that sort of stuff. But yeah, a real quite powerful fragrance of marzipan, but it only pushes that fragrance out when it gets that very bright light. So when it catches a little bit of sun or something like that, it pushes that fragrance out, and it's quite strong. So fragrant, pretty long lasting, and attractive little blooms. Now, this is my only Tolumnia in bloom at the moment, and I'm going to film the blooms twice. These are the older blooms. Take a note of the colour, especially round the edge of the lip. Yeah? So that's the old blooms. Now let's have a look at the new ones. Yeah, I think you can see the difference. You know, the coloration around that lip is quite dramatic when they first open. And also the depth of the yellow and the depth of the red. They are very deep, very rich colours when they first open, and then they fade. And most Tolumnias do that to one extent or another. You tend to find the ones with the white backgrounds with sort of pink and or red markings don't fade as much because they have that white background. But this one does, and it's attractive in both its forms. You know, the more pastel colours, very nice, very delicate, but that's the difference on this one. When it first opens, very, very dramatic, sort of dynamic colours with incredible depth. Lovely little blooms. And my epidendrum's looking very nice in the bright light. It's got 6 spikes on the go at the moment, and as far as I know, that will go to the Wessex Orchid Society show on Saturday the 24th. It's looking good. Very attractive, rich orange with some touches of yellows in there, some deeper oranges towards the centre. Absolutely beautiful blooms. It's a no ID, but it is of the radicans type, species being the radicans, but there are many hybrids produced along those lines, and some gorgeous colours from yellows right through to all the oranges into reds and combinations. So but they can grow quite tall, so the one you buy that's in flower may well have been retarded to reduce the growth, and that also they found out in more recent years it actually encourages it to bloom. But obviously once you get it home and treat it normally, they can grow quite tall. You're looking at 2 to 3 feet in a lot of cases, but when you buy them they often appear to be quite a dwarf plant. The chances are they've been forced into looking like that, and they may change as time goes on, but well worth it. Hold their blooms high on long stems and masses of blooms, and effectively sequential. They will drop the older blooms near the bottom of the clusters and carry on pushing up buds through the centre, so they can be in bloom a very long time. Very rewarding orchid blooms. Now, Dendrobium harveyanum hasn't been around in bloom for a while, so that has to be worth getting in close. You can see the weird angle the camera's at. It's virtually pointing vertical. Whoops. The letter P is not ideal when you're trying to keep blooms still. But yeah, very attractive Dendrobium. Medium lasting blooms as Dendrobiums go, excluding Latorias. They just are an exception. But stunning little blooms, frilly all over the place, gorgeous yellow, really deep greeny yellow in the throat of the lip. Very well worthwhile having this plant on the grounds it doesn't grow too big, and if it gets a good root system established, it will produce quite a few new growths and perpetuate the blooming. And for me, apart from in the depths of winter, this one blooms for 3/4 of the year. Now it's a bit on and off, because there are times when spikes are developing but no buds are actually open, but for the last couple of years this has been in bloom probably for at least 2/3 of the year, just a succession of spikes. Obviously my older canes now are running out of places to produce spikes because it's been doing it for 2 years. I've now got 2 really good strong kikis on this plant, so somewhere down the line, as soon as the leaves open properly and the roots extend, there'll be a pair of kikis up for grabs probably. Now, they'll take a while to grow on, but nonetheless, if I'm going to get rid of quite a few of my plants later in the year and move them on to viewers, to all intents and purposes they'll be as good as damn it free, because I'm not interested in making money out of things. I just like to think that other people have got some plants that they'd like and enjoy growing on, where kikis are concerned anyway. So it's just a sort of token cost really, covering the postage and stuff like that. But that's later in the year. I'm not mucking about posting stuff with the temperatures as they are now, so coming soon. But that will be one particular Dendrobium where there will be a couple of new plants to pass on once they get going a bit better. Now this is Dendrobium primulinum, and although it's only got one bloom open at the moment, there's quite a few buds showing in 2 of the other canes, so there will be more. But at the moment this is on one of the oldest canes and recently opened, and I mean, quite honestly, it does need getting in closer to really see that delicate veining on that lip, and also the patterning on the petals and sepals, which from a distance they just look a sort of purple colour, or pale mauve I suppose you'd call that. It's not quite pink, but heading along those lines. Mauve I suppose you'd call that. But even those have got a delicate patterning on. Oh, rats. So I've just watered some of the mounts and hung them back up a little bit too quick, so I've just been dripped on all down my forehead and all across my glasses, so I shall have to go and wipe my glasses off now. Good job it didn't go on the camera. Never thought of that. Anyway, very attractive bloom. This bloomed for me a long time ago, and then the plant went downhill, and since then the plant has grown some nice canes last year. Totally deciduous at the moment, not a leaf in sight, but you can probably see just behind the bloom there's several new growths just starting on this one. So I think this plant sort of come back from the brink, shall we say, and produced its first bloom. Absolutely gorgeous. And this is Oncidium Twinkle, yellow. Tiniest, whoops, now I've moved it. Tiniest of blooms, but nonetheless it's the colour and the splash that you get with twinkles that makes them attractive. Many blooms on a spike, and the colour rather than the individual blooms, but sometimes it's nice to have a closer look. This is the last spike on this one. This had 6. This one got a first at the Bournemouth Orchid Society as well. But irrespective of that, I don't grow my orchids to show them. If there happens to be one suitable to go in a show, so be it, but I don't plan it that way. It just happens, basically. But yeah, this one put up 6 spikes at once, and although they were phased, 2 opened first and then followed by the others, and this was the last one to open, so it'll be the last one to go over. But it's not long for the world now. It certainly won't make next month, but I'll be looking for all the new growths now, finished blooming. Come on, fill the pot. But very attractive nonetheless. Oh, and I always forget to say, twinkles are highly fragrant. All of them. They are all fragrant. They vary slightly between the sort of cinnamon coloured one, the one with the autumn colours. There's a pink one, there's one that's almost red, and then there's the whites. And the one that I've got, which I haven't seen anybody else with yet, is called Tiny Twinkle, and it's like a miniature version of a miniature orchid. So that one really does have tiny blooms, but nonetheless, very fragrant. Well, this is my Dendrobium nobile type, Prima Donna. Most of the blooms on the 2-year-old canes are now open, using up the nodes that it didn't use last year. So don't be too ready to cut your canes off. And all of last year's growths, the buds are pushing nicely, but we haven't really had a sort of good look at the blooms since they opened. And they come up in quite massive clusters. These are attractive, very faint fragrance, but nothing to write home about. But lovely depth of colour in the lip, lovely deep golden yellow, and then you've got a sort of primrosy yellow for the rest of the blooms, with those little pink tinges on the edges again that to me just sets them off nicely. This may well go to the Wessex Orchid Society show. I don't know. The trouble is, if half the buds aren't open yet and half are, that won't go down too well. They don't mind a few buds coming on. Oh, the fan's just kicked in now. It must be getting warm. But anyway, yeah, a massive show, this one. Yeah, that is a lot of blooms. A lot of blooms and loads more buds still to come all over the place. Always been a good performer for me, this one. It's very good. Big, but very good. Again, you're looking at well over 2 feet long canes, and each year they seem to get a couple of inches longer than they did the year before. If you look at the previous canes back here, they're in the centre mainly, they're a little bit shorter than last year's growth, so I don't know how much bigger it's going to get, but I might have to extend the roof upwards to accommodate it, but it's looking good at the moment. We'll catch this one just before it drops, because these came out as a pair a few days apart. I think this fan's back to front. It switches off when the sun comes out. It'll be back on again in a minute. But this one dropped a few days ago. This one won't be far behind. Nice coloration in the centre, But this is Maxillaria picta, and that's not what the bloom should look like. This should have spotty, blotchy markings all over it, front and back. So it could be an alba form. Also, the species itself does have quite variable colorations, but I've yet to see one without the markings at all. So I think I might have been sold an alba form, maybe. As such, I'm not so keen on it, but because it's not what I wanted, not because it's not attractive, if you see what I mean. But I think what I'm going to do with this one, I was thinking of just passing it on to somebody else. It's got 3 or 4 new growths coming on at the moment. Perhaps I'll keep it, let those mature, and see what it blooms like next time. Because sometimes a first-time bloomer hasn't got the normal coloration. I mean, it's a lovely deep yellow on the inside, and lovely markings on the lip. It's just not what I thought I'd bought, but attractive nonetheless. No fragrance as far as I can detect. The Sharry baby sitting there in the sun, filling the place with chocolate. This spike's starting to go over now. You can see blooms are fading, so it's not going to be long for this world. But it does have another one coming on behind. And as the blooms get to the point where they start to fade, their fragrance does reduce down. But nonetheless, it's lasted quite well and produced wonderful fragrance, which is why I keep the plant, really. Rather than just for the blooms themselves, but still doing well. Right, this is one of my largest bloomed Restrepias. As Restrepias blooms go, that's a large one. Bearing in mind some of them are only the sort of size of my top of my little finger, but this is a big one. This is Restrepia haulis, I think it's pronounced, but it's French. Delicate patterning, unusual shape. A lot of people start reaching for their bug sprays every time I film these, but it's the interesting shape that I like, and that's why I've got quite a few of these. It's getting difficult to film with the tripod now because the temperature's getting up and the fans keep kicking on and off, and I can only film with the tripod when the plant itself is absolutely motionless. As soon as it moves, it goes blurred. But the camera will focus close in while it's still. So I have to keep messing about with the fan. Luckily I've only got a few more close-ups to do, but yeah, there we go, lovely Restrepia. Now, I've deliberately filmed these two Restrepias back to back, one after the other, because looking at these two from a distance, they look absolutely identical. But as soon as you get in close, hopefully you can see the difference. Another large Restrepia bloom. I'll do pop-ups of the names because quite a few of my Restrepias came from the Eric Young Foundation, and they're in French, and my French is less than desirable. I'll leave it at that. And everybody can read the words on a pop-up, so I'll run with that at the moment. But yeah, two similar, but when you look at the detail, different Restrepias. That's my two largest bloomed ones. Now we've gone from the big to the tiny. I think this is my smallest bloomed Restrepia. See if I can get a finger in there without flipping touching anything, because it will move. There we go. So you can see this is a very, very tiny Restrepia. But look at the colours. It's got to be worth having for that. And a prolific bloomer for me, this one. This is a species, Falkenbergii. And at the moment it's got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 blooms on it, and several buds to come, and some that have just gone over. Just blooms on and off all the time, but lovely deep yellow gold colour with a vibrant red. Yeah, I do like this one a lot. I have one that's not in bloom at the moment that is almost identical as far as the colours are concerned, except for it's half as big again. So it's easier to see the patterning and the colouring. But this little one just keeps blooming on and off, and it does well. I've had this one a long time. This is one of my more mature Restrepias. Well, this is my only Miltoniopsis in bloom at the moment. These are big. Yeah, very large blooms. Not all Miltoniopsis have huge blooms. Some of them are quite delicate, but this is the big one. This is Miltoniopsis alexander. nicknamed Donald, but not by me. If you can't see it, well, I had to have it explained. But anyway, very attractive bloom. Single bloom on a spike, not good. This should have 4 or 5 blooms to be strong and healthy and showing that the plant is happy. But Miltoniopsis are never that happy in my grow room. It's too warm for them a lot of the time. The only reason they hang in there, I think, is the high humidity and the fact that I've got airflow, certainly in the summer anyway. But at least I got a bloom. So there we go. Well, this is my only Masdevallia bloom at present. This is Masdevallia Snowbird. It's a sort of almost a heat tolerant one, because this is the plant that's grown the best for me, but it's seriously objected to being repotted. But it was a bit of an emergency. The media was starting to go, and you really don't want that to happen underneath Masdevallias. The roots will go with it. But nonetheless, it's picking up slowly but surely, and it's managed one single bloom that's not going to be around much longer, but at least it's here for now. These are another type of orchid where people think about reaching for the bug spray. They are an unusual shape. I mean, the tails on the blooms can be variable in length. The lower 2 tails can often cross over or stick straight out sideways, so they're variable shapes and all colours, literally. This is pure white, you know, right through into the yellows, the oranges, the reds, and patterns and stripes and spots, infinitely variable, but cool growers in the main, and high humidity and good air movement, or they won't do too well. So they're not ideal for everybody, but I've got a few that are hanging on. This is one of my Phalaenopsis. This has actually got a name, Zeng Min Brontosaurus. Did have 4 blooms, one dropped a day or 2 ago. This one will be following on behind, followed by these 2. It's been out for absolutely ages, and yeah, as Phalaenopsis go, it's a relatively small plant, consequently relatively small blooms, but beautifully patterned. Yeah, well, it is for me anyway. I absolutely love those blooms. Nice, it's a sort of pale yellow with a red, spotty, blotchy, veiny markings, and then the lip has got contrasting colours. So right in the centre of the plant you've got white with a little purple circle round the base of the petals and sepals, and then the lip mainly white, but then it's got some deep pink bordering onto red, and then right in the centre is a deep gold. So it's got some colour going for it, this one, albeit relatively small. My other mini Phalaenopsis that's open at the moment, and again, the size of the blooms doesn't matter when you've got colours and patterns like that. It's a very delicate bloom, this one, with a cat hair on it. They get everywhere. Yeah, I like these blooms. I think down the line all of my mini Phalaenopsis are going to get mounted, because the ones I have mounted are easier to accommodate. I've got lots more choices as to where they can be, both winter in the house and summer out here, and they seem to do okay. They take up a lot less space as well, so I think they'll all get mounted eventually. But I'm not in any rush to mount the ones that are indoors at the moment, because being in there with that much lower light and drier atmosphere, they're not really actively growing. So I'd like to wait till they're due to come back out here, where they've got the heat and the much higher humidity, which should push them into good vegetative growth and roots. That's the theory anyway. And then they should have done that by the time it's time to bring them indoors again for the winter. Lovely little blooms. And last but not least is the Cattleya with the name that's 8 foot long. It just is a massive name. Xinfeng, Little Sun, Young Min, Golden Boy. And I think we've solved the problem with this, because I bought this as a yellow Cattleya. Well, it ain't, it's orange. And when you start looking that name up on the internet, you start finding lots of pictures of an orange cattleya. So the conclusion is that the nursery posted the wrong picture. So the name of the plant seems correct, but the picture that was on the internet was probably wrong. And if you think how many hybrids a nursery could have, that could easily be done. It's just anyway, it's a pretty bloom, irrespective of it's not what I was expecting. You know, it's got the deepest red in the centre of the lip, lovely bright vibrant orange, and more to come round here. Yeah, so yeah. And I think the fact that this plant got quite badly disturbed, you know, uprooted from where it came from, uprooted from its nursery, stuck in a box, sent over to Roger, uprooted again and put in a holy clay pot. I doubt if that blooming is typical. I suspect future blooms on newer growths will be better than that. And quite honestly, I can already tell a progression here. This one has 2 blooms, this one has 1. This latest new growth, I hope that's not a scale. I'll have to get at that. But this latest growth, although this is a winter growth and it's smaller, it's still got 3 blooms. So I think future growths on this one are probably going to produce 3+ blooms of that rather nice colour. So that's it for this one. That's everything in bloom. I hope I haven't missed anything. It's getting to the point where it's quite easy to miss things because there's quite a lot around and they're in lots of different places. So hopefully I haven't missed anything. I'm sure somebody will tell me off if I have. And yeah, hope you enjoy these videos. I enjoy making them. It gives me a chance to have a real close look at some of my blooms, and often a closer look at some of the plants as well. So see you next time.